Brent, Christian, when it comes to creating a workers' compensation case, what does that typically look like when you're building that?
Well, the first thing you have to look for is a work-related event that causes an injury, a work accident. In South Carolina, just walking on the job and having your knee give out doesn't count as a workers' comp case. You have to have some type of event that leads to the injury. It can be a stumble, you can stub your toe on a little curb and fall, but just walking or just having something happen to you bad while on the job is not a workers' comp accident. So the first thing you need to look at is find a workers' comp accident.
In North Carolina, to sparse that out a little bit more, the back is a different body part than the arms and the legs when workers' comp's related. The back, you don't have to trip over something. If you're lifting something and you feel a pop in your back, that qualifies as a traumatic incident that brings in a workers' compensation claim.
Now, what if you're looking at something like an occupational disease case? How is that different?
An occupational disease case isn't necessarily an accident. An occupational disease is something if you're exposed to cotton dust, and then that would be a bisonosis claim. There's asbestos on the job, then you'd have an asbestos claim. So occupational disease cases are more of what you come in contact with when you're on the job rather than a work-related accident. And you can still technically call that a work-related accident because we hope, you're accidentally being exposed to bisonosis or asbestos. We hope your employer isn't knowingly doing that, but that would also qualify as a workers' comp case.
So a result of your work environment. Now, Christian, how about a repetitive trauma case? What does that look like?
So a repetitive trauma case, I tell a lot of people to think of assembly line type cases or a repetitive motion that you're doing over and over and over again. A lot of times they can be difficult to bring because someone gets hurt from doing that job for only a limited amount of time, a couple weeks. That's not to say you can't have a claim from that, but it's more difficult to prove that than someone that's been doing that job for months or years.
Now, let's say a space or a company is aware of neglect. How can that affect compensation?
Well, in North and South Carolina, it's really hard to do anything outside of workers' comp. So I think in these states, not so much. I think you're limited to the workers' comp. I think in North Carolina, there's been one case that...
It's very difficult to sue your employer. There's a case that came out that effectively almost completely bars that. There has to be beyond gross negligence for you to have a second claim against your employer. The only difference is we talked about earlier, if you're in a third-party claim, which means someone else caused your injury other than an employer, you can have two cases out of that.
Brent, Christian, I know that workers' compensation can be a big concept, so thank you for breaking that down for us.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
This segment of QC Life was sponsored by Stewart Law Offices.